Alright, so now I want to go over forming tools on the Trumpf machine. Um, as you can see from this picture here, this is an example of a lance and form tool. It does this in one hit, and it just cuts the rectangle out and forms it up. And these are the differences in a forming tool and a standard tool. So we have the forming tool on the left, and as you can see, there is no stripper plate. This is a standard tool on the right, and you can see that this black plate right here is the stripper plate, and what that does is it actually strips the material off of the punch after each punch. The reason why that's important, because if you were, after you hit this and form this up, if you were to go back over this form with a standard punch, that stripper tool would either mash this down or it would get caught on this as it was traversing the sheet, and it's going to cause problems, could cause damage. It's definitely going to mess the sheet up. So we want to avoid interfering with our forms after we punch them. So I've got an example right here of the part that we were just looking at, and this is what the form tool looks like in 2D. And so these are the parts, this is the program, and as you can see, so we do the trapezoid first like normal, and so that's our wire joint right there on the edges. That's what's going to hold these parts together so that they stay, they don't go flying everywhere. Then we do the circle, then we do the other size circle. Then what I did on this one is, so if you look, I've got one punch that is 1/4 by 2 1/4. And what that does is it hits one time right there on the edge all the way up the sheet. So it hits up this side, traverses over, and hits down this side. So right after that, then I'm going to use my custom lance and form tool. And so it's going to traverse over top of the punch that we just punched. And the reason for that is, once we go with this 1/4 by 2 1/2, you can see where it traverses and it never goes over top of the form. And so this is what you're looking for. You have to be very careful when you're doing this. And so if you were going to use this regular punch after a forming tool, then you've got to make very, very sure that you do not traverse over a form and it's going to get caught. We also have a tool for this. So this tool, it is a regular rectangle, and this is the one we have right here, is a 1/8 by 2.9. 2.9 is the longest punch that we could get on our diameter of tool, and comment close to form. So what this tool is it doesn't have a stripper plate. It has a urethane stripper on the tool itself, on the punch. And so every time the punch punches, the rubber or the urethane actually pushes the material off the punch, but the urethane is actually bolted to the punch. So what that does is it allows you to go over top of forms and it doesn't get caught. And so the machine is actually looking for a tool without a stripper. So every time you form, after a form tool, the machine will error out if you use a regular punch. We have a way around that, which I'll show you in just a minute. But ideally, if you form, you want to use the close to form tool after that. If not, the machine will give you an error saying that it can't do that because the tool's got a stripper on it. So if you look in your file explorer on the server, so you go to the server, machines list standards and control, Trumpf, there is a picture on here that I created that will show you how to do that, or a PDF, and it's called, if you look, it's punching after forming code. And so the way you do this is, if you're going to use a standard punch after a forming tool, you have to go in and put this highlighted line after the last tool. So if you looked up, there'd be a forming tool, the code for a forming tool up above this. And so on this particular program, I'm using this rectangle. It's a 2 3/4 by 1/8 rectangle to cut out the part. So this is my last punch. So when you're looking at the code, you go to your last punch and you put in this line. So you have to do the same thing as when you do a tubing laser. You have to go, so all these are in multiples of 10s. So right after this, it's a 40. So you just put a space, 45, and you enter all capital TC underscore tool underscore position, and then no spaces, parentheses, change underscore next, and then in parentheses. And what this does is it tells the machine that it's okay to go ahead and use a standard tool after a forming tool. And I can show you what I mean. So this is a program that's already created, so we'll go ahead and generate the code. If you were actually tooling this up and we're going to save it, you'd want to enter a dump for the nibbles, but since we're not going to save it, we'll just hit OK. And so when you get to this screen of the code, you want to click on the edit code icon, and you want to scroll all the way down till you see the last tool that's used. And so when we scroll up, and so you can see it here, up above it says tool special, and that's the tool that we're using, the Lance and Form 3/4 by 1/2 inch. And then it goes through its punches, and then so the last tool that we're going to cut out is this 2.5 by 1/4 punch. So right under where it calls out the tool, you want to make a space, in, capital N, 1295, so it goes 1290 and then it goes to 1300, so we just need to make sure that's in numerical order. And you want to enter TC underscore tool position, start parentheses, change underscore next, in parentheses. And so once you enter that in, the machine will allow that tool to be used. If you do not enter that in after the machine uses a forming tool, every tool after that with a stripper, it's not going to let you use. It's going to say, hey, I've got an error, I can't do this. And so you have to have that code. Another thing too is when you're setting up forming tools. So let me exit out of this. No, don't save. Don't save. We'll open this back up. So when we go to tool library, and I'll just open up custom tools. That's the one, Lance and Form 3/4 by 1/2. So and we can do that in another video, but you import a DXF to create this tool, this shape. You really don't touch any of this. You just make sure it can go 360 degrees. You can tell it. You don't really have to click any of these, but when you go to the Advanced tab, you have to give it a number, an identifying number. So for a forming tool, you always have to start off with a 13. And then the next 6 numbers are the identifier. You can only put in 8 numbers total. And so for this to identify, we just put in 750 by 500. Don't touch anything here. So the next thing you would do, is this a forming tool? So you need to change this from 0 to 1 to indicate yes. And then you have your plunge position offset, or BDC. And so what this is, this number is given to you by whoever made the tool. So if you go to N, Machines List, Standard Controls, Trumpf, and then you go to the Forming Tool folder, and this is the one that we were doing earlier. And this is an older one. They don't look quite like this anymore. But when Wilson Tool or whoever made the tool gives you this, they will give you, so it's a tool type, forming tool, type 13. They give you the punch length, which you enter into the machine. They give you the optimal forming height, which you also enter into the machine. And then they give you your TDC and your BDC. What this is you're telling the machine, I've got so much stroke on every punch. The machine just figures that out. It's a set number, and it is what it is. So what you're actually telling the machine on the BDC, that's telling it how far it goes on the bottom, right? So you're telling this machine, I want to go negative 0.059 inches more than you normally would go. So 0, it goes on the BDC. If you were 0, it's going to go to the standard. If it was a punch, it's going to go to the standard depth. So we're telling it we want to go almost a 1/16 of an inch more down, since it's negative. If that number was positive, then obviously it would go up, so it wouldn't go as far as it normally does. Same thing with the TDC. This is the top. So 0 is, hey, go where you normally go on the top when you're punching. The machine figures that out based on how long your punch is. If you were to change that, a negative would mean you would go higher, and a positive means you would stay lower. And so the manufacturer tool will give you this. Now, I will say this, when you're first running a new tool, you want to go less than this, and you want to ease up to this number. You don't want to go too deep, because you could break the tool. And then again, material thicknesses can differ, a few thousandths from manufacturer, whoever made it. So you have to, you want to make sure you don't go too deep. You could damage the tool. So on this program, I have figured out I don't need to go 0.059. I figured, we tested it at machine and played with measurements, and I came up with a 0.04 is an optimum depth to get this form here. And it works fairly well on the material that we actually get in, on the thickness. And so that's what that is. The plunge position, the BDC, it is negative 0.04. This will go with the tooling data to the machine, so at the machine they don't have to do anything. And now an experienced operator or setup person can change this at the machine if they wish. But once you get it right, ultimately you really don't want machine operators changing this at the machine. You just want them to have to run the program. And then I don't think anything else gets changed. I think everything else, all these properties just stay the same. So again, you just have to enter your identity number, no more than 8 characters, 8 numbers. Forming tool, you have to tell it yes. And then a plunge position, you have to give it that, which again comes from the manufacturer of the tool. And so that's how you would set up this forming tool.